This week in the conversation, I have the honor to receive my friend, Anne Merino. In the conversation, we're going to be talking about her fantastic fantasy novel titled Hawksmoor, the story of Vampire and Faerie. But before we get into this beautiful video, I just want to remind you that it's important to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it's going to you as soon as possible. Please let us know what you think of this videos also. The best way to support the conversation is to subscribe to it and also to leave us always a little comment at the bottom of the video. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening with a compelling author. I'm here with Anne Merino. We're going to be talking about her wonderful book titled Hawksmoor, a novel of Vampire and Faerie. So, Anne, welcome to the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. This is a great honor, and I'm super excited to be here.
Okay. Would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Anne Merino?
Not a very important person. Oh, I've had a strange checkered career. I've been a ballet dancer. I've been an actress. I've been in a rock band. Anything, you know, I've many scams in the fire. So, and now I'm a writer, so that's sort of exciting.
Okay, so so what really led you to become, after all these, experiences, then you've come around and then said, now I want to decide to become a writer? So who inspired you, in a sense, to become?
Well, my family are all writers. My father was a writer. My mother wrote a little bit. My uncle wrote Welsh plays. We all do something in that. And I've always written. Even when I was a ballet dancer in rehearsal for my own amusement, I would write little mysteries on, great legal pads and, write them for myself. And so I've always written, and I developed a form of, I'm also a choreographer.
Okay.
And I developed a form of ballet, which was a fusion of spoken word and dance, so that it was sort of like musical theater, but without the annoying songs, just movement and language. And so I was writing stories with those, all original ideas. And then I just it was interesting. I read a book about the restoration of Burghley House in Great Britain. Okay. And it was all about how they, all the mistakes they made and how they discovered sort of secret panels and old pieces of Elizabethan furniture and that sort of thing. And I thought, what a fascinating idea. Okay. What if you were restoring a great English house or castle?
Okay.
And what if somebody could actually remember what it was like in the past? And I thought, who could that be? And I thought, oh, a vampire would probably remember. And that's how it all started.
All right, that's interesting. Now let's dive into Hawksmoor. Now, the story is set the stage as a very handsome vampire by the name Robin Dashwood, who actually he is a history professor in New York.
Yeah, yep.
Yes, and also at some point is falling in love with the Lady Caroline DeBarry.
Right.
Okay, and then to some strange turnaround and find, return to Britain, to England.
To kind of rediscover his past, yes, to go back. Because she's in the process of needing to restore the castle because some of the staterooms are really getting a bit run down. The roof needs repair. They need lots of money to do that. And so she's been doing this kind of art gallery thing in New York as a kind of benefit to support the restoration of Hawksmoor Castle. And that's where he meets her, in the first place. Then he decides he really needs to go home and look into the murder, he feels, of someone he cared about a lot in his human life in the early 18th century. So he kind of goes back with two purposes. One, to kind of follow Caroline because she's kind of captured his heart, and also to kind of investigate this long gone historical mystery and see how that played out.
Okay, let me ask a question right here, Ed. You know, can someone really captures the heart of an empire?
I think so. Well, because, you know, the vampires have kind of morphed a lot. They kind of started out as these kind of cold, emotional, you know, beings like Bela Lugosi and kind of the original Bram Stoker vampire who was kind of merciless and ruthless and that sort of thing. And then we all decided that maybe they could be, you know, sort of people that, you know, maybe lived these incredibly long lives and still had human feelings and still, it's my German Shepherd, growling in the distance. And I think the first short story that did that for me was a short story that came out in Pell Mell magazine in the Victorian period by an author called Count Steinbach. And he was an Eastern European aristocrat. He used to help Oscar Wilde. He supported Oscar Wilde for a long time. And he wrote a short story called The Sad Story of a Vampire. And it was this exquisite short story about this sort of empathetic vampire that had great feelings for his victims. And the first time when I read that, I thought how fascinating the character was and how extraordinarily modern this short story was for the time it came out. And that kind of led me to think, oh, we could have quite an emotional vampire if we wanted to, and henceforth Robin Dashwood.
So is it what you say? You said something that Robin Dashwood is a very British vampire. Why is that? Is there a difference between a British vampire or maybe let's say Eastern European vampire? Is there a difference?
Well, I suppose there is. I mean, I sort of see him. I preface this by saying that my favorite author in the whole wide world is P.G. Wodehouse.
Okay.
I love, anytime I feel depressed, I pick up a novel by P.G. Wodehouse and he immediately puts me in a good mood. And I wanted Robin Dashwood to be kind of in some ways an archetypal British gentleman.
Right.
And so I think of him as being very, very British, and the vampires that he works with in the sequel, actually, that has just gone to the editor with the revisions complete. You meet a lot more of the British vampires that come into his life.
Okay, I'm waiting for that one too. You know.
Ooh, thank you. I hope so. But I do think of him as being very British. I think of the dramatic quality of, you know, that wonderful drama of the Russians and the Eastern Europeans being a little different from the kind of, sort of a selfie-facing, very, very polite British vampire.
Which can be pretty deceiving too, because most women who will fall in love with this wonderful, handsome gentleman, well-spoken, with very aristocratic type of British accent, you know, that can be pretty deceiving too, right?
We hope so, anyway.
So, and listen, is that the first of a trilogy?
Yes.
And now, how long will it took you to conceive book one of this trilogy?
It took me about a year to write.
A year.
It was the idea rattled around in my head. I was in the middle of, I ran my own ballet company in Los Angeles for a long time. So I had lots of work. And
is that where you're talking to me now? You're from LA?
No, Northern California now.
Oh, okay.
We decided during the writer's strike of 2007, that we needed to hop it and move to cheaper, slightly less expensive environs. So here we are. And we never went back. But anyway, I ran my company and I was super, super busy. So the idea rattled around in my head for a while. And then I thought, gosh darn it, I'm actually going to sit and write this. And I did. It took about a year. And then the process of actually editing it for Rivercliff and actually doing the audio book, which took forever, took a while as well.
And I'm pretty sure you were very much afraid because Robin was really talking to you, even harassing you at night, saying, you really have to let me out, right? Robin Dashwood.
Yeah, I know. Yes, he absolutely did. He wanted his story told, gosh darn it. So so I got going on it.
Now let's get into the strategic part of it, because I know in writing fantasy writing, period, is one of the most high. I think it's second to romance.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, people are very across the world. Why is that, Anne? Why is such a fascination with stories, fictional stories like this?
Well, I think we all have, well, we all, like, all is very general. Some people don't like it, but I think a lot of us love things that go bump in the night. We love Halloween. We love the idea of the thin veil between the realms. I think it's a fascinating concept. And kind of like the Luke Garou, it kind of pulls you in. It's so interesting. I also think that the world we live in is sometimes very unappealing. And I think the fantasy world isn't a great escape for people.
I mean, this is the first time I heard the writer say it. It's so unappealing. That's quite really, it's a beautiful observation, quite frankly. There's a lot of sorrow, scare, and especially these days, we're living in a moment of uncertainty, war and devastation, and think famine. You beautifully
Pandemic.
describe it right there.
Right, right.
There. So
So
we have a tendency of trying to escape from this, scary world into a fantasy one, where we find ourselves.
I do, and I think that for women who love fantasy, and men love it as well, but for the ones that kind of have a lot of romantic subplot, I
Right.
think the women, I think they've read so much romance and they know where it's going. And I think the fantasy, we have a heavy romantic subplot in a fantasy novel. It's sort of, it's a little more unexpected for them. They don't know quite where it's going to go. So it's a little bit more intriguing, I think. And I think that's part of the draw as well.
That's the word, intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the word, intriguing. And let me ask you something. Most fantasy writers that I have here in the conversation and always tell me, besides writing fantasy, the number 2 preference would be a memoir or a historical novel.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing with you?
I love history. My mother was a history fanatic. My father was something that
history fanatic.
She was very Welsh, and she knew all the Welsh legends and things. Kind of like your parents would tell you. She had some real chill.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I love a good mystery. So I probably kind of think of what I write actually as a paranormal mystery. So I like mysteries and historical mysteries. So a kind of fusion of those things. I really love to write. So I'm thinking about doing sort of a straight-on mystery story at some point.
Okay.
Seeing if I can do that. I don't know. They're really tough to write, though. I admire mystery writers a lot.
Really? How difficult, Annie, it is to write a mystery story as opposed to writing something like a romance story.
Yeah. Well, the thing about writing a paranormal mystery like Hawksmoor is you can drape it in so much stuff. You've got secret realms, you've got castles, you've got all this kind of cool stuff. You've got Robin Dashwood, you've got his mysteries and the greater vampire mysteries, etc., etc. But with a straight mystery, coming up with that little keyhole plot, I admire that. That's really clever writing. So I bow my head to really solid mystery writers. No meaning.
One thing I really like about your writing, Anne, is just the way you bring the story through. You pen the story in a way that it could be at some point in the story, it gives you the feel that you're reading a romance story. I mean, it's what you call that. It's not an oversimplification, but it is something that I always call the sophistication of simplicity. Is that what I see in you when I'm writing your beautiful novelistic prose?
Oh, thank you. Well, it's funny because the books that I read as a child, I was obsessed with the Scarlet Pimpernel. I read all of the Scarlet Pimpernel books. I read, what was the other one? Rogue Male by Jeffrey Household, which is a sort of set in Nazi Germany, but very romantic in its way, but romantic in the old-fashioned sense of the word. The Prisoner of Zenda, which is sort of a great sort of romance in the old sense. And so I think a lot of that pulls into my stuff as well.
Okay.
Love that old stuff.
Has there been any great, I would say, how's the audience receiving has received?
You know, people seem to like it. We're small. I mean, Rivercliff is a small publishing company. It doesn't have the enormous coffers to throw the promotions at it. Unfortunately, like a Brad Meltzer, or who's a wonderful writer, by the way. But they're very, very fortunate in being able to put a lot of money behind those books. But for the amount that Rivercliff can do, because it has a lot of writers and it publishes a lot of good books, I think it's done very well. It's found an audience. People seem to like it. The reviews have been really good. Publishers Weekly liked it, which was a great relief.
Yeah.
So I think it's done well. I think sometimes it's not to everybody's taste, because everybody has, interesting, as you mentioned, the fantasy world or the fantasy reader. They have very distinct opinions about what they like and how they would like their vampire fiction to go. And I think some books don't suit everybody, but I think overall it's been well received.
Yeah, I mean, you don't write for the whole world.
I've always taken the tact. I don't know, maybe in your own writing as well. If I like it, that's okay. That's good enough.
You know what? Most people went on to become the superheroes in the world of writing. Never expected it to be this way. If anything, I've been writing for so many years now. If anything, I've learned, and it's just you don't know what's going to blow up. You just don't know. I
know, absolutely true. It could be anything, and there are wonderful novels, I think, that go overlooked an awful lot of the time, and then something like 50 Shades of Grey will suddenly explode. What is she now, the wealthiest writer in the world or something? And I guess people like it, but it's not to my taste. It's not something that I would seek out, and I think of it as being a little simplistic, maybe. And I don't know. I as I say, a lot of people love it, but I don't know why that works, and something that's really cantilevered and beautifully put together and deeply important will sit where, something that seems a little more simplistic, which is wow.
But don't you think that sometimes it's the moment, or maybe it's the moment that can actually trigger something, and all of a sudden everyone, all eyes on you?
I do. I think there's a zeitgeist for sure up in pop culture and society. There's just a kind of moment where something just hits at the right time, something that everybody's been kind of thinking about or looking for or something, and it just goes through the roof. And you can't really. I mean, you look at Harry Potter, whom I think is charming. They're charming stories. But there are a lot of charming stories that are written, and I've seen a lot of lovely children's books that never get the attention that Harry Potter does. It just was the right thing at the right time. And there was something, I think, I always boiled the Harry Potter phenomenon down to the fact that it was a group of friends who liked each other and were nice to each other and supported each other. And somehow this just really touched children everywhere. They wanted friends like that. They wanted, I think, with the harshness of kind of school with bullying and everything, I just think that they were in love with this idea of a group of pals that did these adventures together, and it just for some reason just got them. And well done to her. It's a whimsical world.
So in writing this story, do you see yourself in it also at some point in the story?
I think, yes. Well, I think we all do, don't we? A little bit.
Yes,
I think there, I grew up as a horsewoman. My father was a member of the United States Army Horse Show team. In 1948, he toured Europe with them and was a fine horseman. I think the Earl of Hawksmoor is very much my father. Very much things that the Earl says were actually things that my father father would say, and I just moved them directly into the book. And I think there are aspects of Lady Caroline and her life in the country, very much me.
That's what I was going to say.
I wish I was as glamorous as Lady Caroline, but I'm not. But I do think her interest in horses and her love of the country life is very much me.
So let's get back to you on a much more personal note. So your father is an American professor or philosopher.
Yes, he was a political scientist. I think they called it after he considered himself a classical philosopher. But I think he ended up being called a political scientist in the way the departments were redistributed. Very, very bright man. Wrote a lot of books, a lot of articles, was a contributing editor to the National Review for about 30 years. Was also, interestingly enough, contributing editor to the great equestrian magazine, The Chronicle of the Horse, for about 30 years as well. So he wrote a lot about show jumping and that kind of thing. He was a fascinating person. I miss him a lot. Very, very dry sense of humor.
Dry sense of humor. And your mom is Welsh. So, and you were growing up, at least you lived in both places, in the US and also in Britain.
Yes. As a child, I started life kind of in Wales with my Welsh family over there. Because now that my parents are gone, everybody's over there. I don't have really any family in the United States anymore.
Really?
And that was very interesting and a fascinating way to grow up. And then I sort of came over to Scottsdale, Arizona. My dad was also, it's a long story, like a lot of professors, he moved around a lot to different departments.
Right.
But he was also chairman of the philosophy department at the University in Saskatchewan.
Okay.
We lived in Canada for a while, and then we came down to Scottsdale. Okay. And he always had a horse business going on the side all the time. He came down to Scottsdale. He started a hunter jumper barn down there, and I rode hunters and jumpers for him for a long time. And so very strange. We're all over. So I consider myself kind of in the old days, they used to have a classic mid-Atlantic person, 1 foot in the UK, 1 foot in the United States. And I sort of feel like that. I don't feel completely at home in the UK. I don't feel completely at home in the US either. So I'm sort of in the middle.
And you know what? One person told me a lot, it's a tragedy, when you love both places, it's just like your heart seems to, split or something, Yeah. But you were born in the UK or
No, I actually was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. My father was teaching at a university in Tennessee and teaching riding. And my mother was kind of the British equivalent of a Fulbright scholar. She had come over to Tennessee and she was taking some riding lessons at the stable. My mother rode well also. And she asked to ride a famous show jumper called Silver Dollar, who my father rode professionally in the ring. And he said, okay, put her up on this. And she was a little tiny woman. She was about 95 pounds and 5'2", and Silver Dollar was a big horse.
Okay.
Her little legs just couldn't go all the way around him. So anyway, she fell off. Silver Dollar popped her off over a fence, and my father gave her a hand up out of the dirt and asked her out to dinner. And that was all it took. So they were together forever after that. But
together forever. Well, and then it's you, the product, right? you just the product of it. Okay, so now let's switch to something a little cozy, because British American, and at this point the cuisine seemed to be a bit confusing. Because I've been to Europe several times, although I've never been to London. The last time I was going to take
you have to go. It's the world's most fascinating city. Yeah.
I was going to take a train from Paris to London, actually. And then for some reason, my wife didn't feel, she was not herself at that time. So we decided not to go anymore.
Yeah.
And then we were flying from Orlando to London. And then we were going to Southampton just to catch a cruise that would take us all the way to St. Petersburg. And we intended to spend a week in London. But the coronavirus, the COVID just broke out and just quite crushed all the plans. So we've been
Oh,
swapped ever since, and you know.
oh no. That would have been a heck of a trip. Oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, you know. But we'll do it someday. You know,
Absolutely.
post-COVID, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah. So, how's the cuisine for you? Growing up, is it like a mix of British American or?
Yeah, it's interesting because my mother didn't cook when she got married to my father. He cooked better than she did.
Yeah.
And so she kind of had to learn. And I think she became quite a competent cook, but she still overboiled vegetables until it was like a puree of water.
Really? And
And
I'm
she
pretty sure
didn't
that you
like,
rejected that, right?
yes, absolutely. And like a lot of wonderful British women of her era, she didn't like spices all that much. I think the Queen's kind of the same way. So food wasn't terribly spicy, and I love spicy food. So every time when I became an adult and I would come home and visit, famous story. She loved to make this genuine Hindu beef curry, which is kind of hysterical. I think it's a recipe she got from the Women's Institute, which is a British women's club. And as you know, the Hindus don't actually eat beef. So a genuine Hindu beef curry is kind of a hilarious concept. Anyway, she made this genuine Hindu beef curry.
Okay.
And it was absolutely tasteless. And I remember going into the kitchen and saying, Mom, thank you for making the delicious genuine Hindu beef curry. But it's not very spicy. Do you think maybe you could put more curry in next time? And she said, oh, I don't like that curry. So I didn't put any in. So that was my mom in a nutshell.
Now, how was the music in the house going on?
Oh, you see, my father was a Baroque music fanatic and an opera fanatic. Yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up with constant barrage of Baroque opera, 19th century opera, and of course Bach and Handel and all those people. And he was very knowledgeable about it. And so I still to this day, I like pop music to some extent, but I remain a classicist. I really love classical music.
Okay. Is that what led you to becoming like a teacher of, teaching music and
Ballet.
yeah. Ballet?
Right. Yeah, no, my mother was a choreographer, which is why she got the Fulbright, kind of that British Fulbright to come over. She was a modern dance choreographer. And I had a terrible stutter as a child. I had stammer. And so she thought maybe something silent like ballet would be a good way to give me some confidence. So.
Okay. Actually, Anne, who you would consider as your preferred one, your favorite one?
My favorite sort of inspiration for writing?
Right, exactly.
Oh, golly, what a tough one. So many wonderful writers that have made me want to write. As much as I love P.G. Wodehouse, and who can ever be P.G. Wodehouse because he's so brilliant, no one's ever going to touch that. I think the British speculative fiction author Michael Moorcock.
Michael Moorcock?
Tremendously influential to me. I think his book, An Alien Heat, which came out in the 1960s, may be my favorite book ever written. It's just a wonderful novel. It's light. It's incredibly creative. It's highly imaginative. It's the language is lush and beautiful, and it's very funny. You laugh out loud reading it a lot, and the hero is charming, the heroine is lovely, and you like them, and that's important to me. I want to like the characters. I don't enjoy film, television, or books in which the people are deeply unlikable. I know maybe I'm not very sophisticated, but I just want to pull for them, Anyway, Michael Moorcock, a wonderful writer. Okay. And he's best known for something called Elric, the Eternal Warrior. Look him up, you'll like him.
Okay, I will. My last question, any advice to writers who would want to be, at least following your path, becoming such an impressive writer as you are, in terms of writing vampire stories with a little bit of romance in the background? What advice would you give to writers?
My advice is always do what your gut tells you to do. I don't care for published writers who have a list of things that you're not a writer unless you do this. You're not a real writer unless you write every day. You're not a real writer unless you produce 50 books by the time you're 20 or whatever. I think the process is different for everyone. Everybody has a way to make it happen. You need to, if you're a beginning writer, you just have to do it until you figure out what yours is. And then once it is, it'll all happen. And that's my advice. Just go with it.
That's true. You know, with that, and I'm just going to say it's been more than a pleasure.
Oh, it's been a delight.
My wonderful friend, Anne Merino.
It's been a delight.
And
oh, thank you so much.